welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm starting this video with showing you this amazing shirt that I thrifted today. Oh my gosh, juggling Pochi. And this hat that I crocheted, it's the second thing that I've ever successfully crocheted. I've only just started crocheting in the past month and I love it. It is so much fun. And this hat turned out really, really cute. And it was made from fair trade wool from Uruguay, so yeah. And I'm also sitting in quite a dark room because I'm still having troubles with migraines and light sensitivity. So if this looks really dark, that's why. If it looks nice and bright, then future Annika has done a really good job on post-production. So hopefully it looks good. Woo! So the other day I was browsing through different patterns for clothing that you can buy online, and I was like, whoa, these are really prohibitively expensive for someone who's maybe just getting into sewing and doesn't have that much money. I've also been looking at fabrics recently and thought the same thing. So I wanted to make a little list of all the tips and tricks that I have learned while being someone who is relatively broke learning to sew. Because fabrics and classes and books and textbooks and all of that stuff, sewing accessories, you name it, are all quite expensive. And it's a pretty expensive hobby to just pick up on a whim if you don't even know if you're gonna like it or not. So this video is gonna be how to get started sewing without spending a fortune. My first tip is to go to thrift stores to find your fabrics. You don't want to be buying, especially the fabrics for your first ever projects, from places like the Spotlight and Lincraft are the big craft stores in Australia. I think you've got Joann's in the US. Is there one called Michael's, or am I making that up right now? Anyway, fabric from these places is expensive, and you're probably also gonna honestly mess it up because you're learning how to sew, and sewing is a little bit hard. So when I first started sewing, I used things like old bed sheets. You can actually find old bed sheets in quite cute floral patterns. I got one which was all like cute vintage looking teacups that I made a dress out of, actually that I used to make the first tutorial on this channel. This orange one here was floral bed sheets. This pinafore was an old bed sheet. Bed sheets are great, especially if it's for your first projects and you're just mucking around with things. Another thing that bed sheets can be useful for is for making prototypes. So before you use the really nice fabric, if you're using like a light cotton or a silk or something like that as your final fabric, then you can use a bed sheet of similar at least sort of fabric to make your prototype. Now I know that a lot of you say that you don't have good thrift stores in your country, and unfortunately that might be the case. You might be able to shop online instead. Places like Etsy or eBay often sell secondhand fabric. But if you do live in a country that has pretty good thrift stores, then you can definitely find good fabrics there. If you're someone who thinks they never have good luck thrifting, then you're probably looking in the wrong places, and I'm actually going to link to a video on how to thrift, which is very applicable to finding fabrics, even though the video I made was about clothes. Aside from thrifted bed sheets, you might also hit the jackpot and find a craft section at the thrift store. I found these today. 2 meters of gingham, 3 meters of sweater fleece fabric, 2 meters of wool tartan, 2 meters of this nice drapey chiffon pattern material, it's really pretty, 4 meters of this really nice drapey tartan for $4. Thrift store prices! And it's not just fabrics, like often there will be a little craft haberdashery section in different thrift stores. Like today I also found a handful of zippers, and I probably get all those fabrics and zippers for the price of maybe 1 or 2 meters of fabric in a normal craft store. Another thing that is great from thrift stores, sewing textbooks. So this is a Women's Day complete book of handicrafts, giant hardcover like tome that I got for $3. I got that today at the thrift store, and while it's from the 70s, the instructions and step-by-step photos to do all of these different crafts are really well detailed. Like, I've learned quite a lot of stuff from it just from reading it today. There's a whole section on metric equivalents, so I don't have to Google it. I can just use this as a reference. We've got how to measure every single part of your body for different clothes, a sewing guide for the thread you should use and how many machine stitches per inch for different types of fabric. And this whole thing is just on how to iron fabrics. Like, this thing is awesome. And it includes a bunch of tutorials of how to make things and patterns. So like, Yes, this might be a 70s design, but a lot of the patterns that they give you are fairly timeless. Besides, 70s stuff is fashionable anyway. I found this awesome one from the 80s a while ago for 50 cents, which is also a really good step-by-step guide to following patterns and making clothes. And this thing I got today as well, which is from the summer of 87 to 88. You would see people wearing this today. Like, I'm pretty sure I've seen that girl on Instagram recently. So don't discredit older sewing guides from thrift shops just because of their age. They are actually often really well written, especially if there's something like Women's Day. If you can find Women's Day books, I have 2 of them, really well written. Another good place to get cheap fabrics and craft supplies is places like estate sales and garage sales. Estate sales, you might be able to score with fabrics because often it might be an older person who has passed away, who has hoarded fabric their whole lives. That is definitely going to be me in the future. I could be the person who has to go through my fabric stash. Or if you know people who have relatives, maybe like their grandma recently moved to a nursing home and left all her fabric stash, they might be like, please take this off us. I have had 3 different people give me huge like roomfuls of fabric that they didn't need anymore because they knew I like sewing. That brings me to another tip. Let everyone in your life know that you like sewing. Make it be known that you are now the sewing person. Because not only will you find these people who might have stashes that they want to unload, they might just be like, oh, I'll buy this person a present. I'll buy them a sewing machine for Christmas. That's what happened to me. I just showed an interest in sewing, and for Christmas that year, my dad noticed that there were sewing machines on sale at the post office, and he was like, awesome, I'm gonna get that for Annika, and the rest is history. Talking about sewing machines, if you're going to be spending any money, this is where you need to spend it. You don't want to be spending your money on fabrics, on patterns, on classes, on books. You want to be spending it here. Because if you have a bad sewing machine, if you go for like the cheapest, worst type, your projects probably won't work out. And you're probably going to think that it's your fault, that you're a bad sewer, when it's actually the sewing machine's fault. It can totally put you off sewing for the rest of your life. Not a good idea. And the benefits to investing in a good sewing machine is that you will have it for years. You can save money in the long run because you're able to make all your own clothes. If you improve a lot and really take to it, you can even make money selling things. So I just really think this is the one thing you really should invest in if you're getting started sewing. That said, there are some really decent sewing machines out there for beginners that are only around $100, $200. I can only speak from personal experience, but I really like my Bernina machine. It is a beginners but semi-computerized machine, which meant that it has let me do a lot more intermediate stuff, not just beginners only stuff. Like I can work with swimsuits really easily, or I can work with denim. And I've had it for, I think it's 4 years at this point, and I've never even had it serviced, and it just works perfectly like the day I got it. Of course, I'm also going to mention free sewing tutorials on the internet. So if you're just learning to sew, I actually compiled a whole page of free beginners sewing tutorials on my website, and of course all of my tutorials are free, and I have a whole beginners playlist that you can go through, which is ranked in order from easy to hard. They're all free. Please use them. My last tip is that there are plenty of places to get free sewing patterns, and I'm going to be linking some of my favorites down below. Colette does a couple of free patterns. Peppermint Magazine has a lot of free patterns. Tilly and the Buttons has some free tutorials. These are all quite beginner friendly, and ones like Tilly and the Buttons and Colette actually teach you how to sew while you use them. If you do spend any money on them, it's kind of like a class and a pattern all in one, so it's quite a lot of value for money. But I'll pop the links to these and some more in the description box down below, so that you can find some good quality beginners patterns that are free. Also, make some sewing friends. Anyone who is friends with me and shows even the slightest interest in sewing, I like load them up with a bunch of fabrics to take home. Is the answer to this one become friends with Annika? No, but I think you'll find that the sewing community is really passionate, eager to help and teach others to learn. So making friends who love sewing and letting the world know that you love sewing is definitely not a bad idea. Speaking of making sewing friends, it's been like a week since I launched the Make Thrift Try community challenge, and there have already been so many photos on Instagram who have taken part in the challenge, or they've gotten started on the challenge, or they're like posting works in progress, and it's been so cool to see. Thank you so much for posting them. I am so excited to see more throughout the month. Remember, it finishes at 31 days after my last video was posted. So if you want to join in, get started with some sewing, it doesn't have to be super professional. If you're a beginner, you are more than welcome, then please join in. If you have any more tips or tricks on how to get started sewing without spending a ton of money, on places where you might be able to find cheap craft accessories, or if you have any favorite free pattern websites that aren't linked in the description box below, please leave a comment. When I witness like a nice friendly interaction in my comment section, I get so happy and I'm like, friends! It honestly makes my day, so please do that. I hope you've enjoyed my little skater beanie emo hair in this video. I think it's very cute. I love this beanie. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful and I'll see you all next time. Bye!